I don't have a problem with death. I have severe fears about waiting for death. It's probably because I've spent my life around a lot of geriatric people. I've had all my grandparents present. I've seen my relatives age rather fast because of diabetes and heart disease, and seeing them in that condition where they are unable to live the quality of life which they had before and yet unable to go. And it's like you're stuck in this somewhere in between. And that has always terrified me. I don't like the idea of being dependent at all. It scares me. I don't like the idea that one day we will have, I don't know, maybe AI-based conversations where we'll wear like VR cameras and have dinner dates together. And I, having been old and aged, might not be able to deal with the technology and I'll be left behind. I'm scared of that as well. And I've seen that happen around me. So I think a couple of months ago, in fact, in Christmas last year, I went to an old age home and it was one of the better ones where very privileged people are welcome to come. And so I asked somebody who was about 85 and I said, well, aren't you feeling overwhelmed by the stage of life? Because you're having a very philosophical conversation. And the person said, you know what? I have money. I can buy more love, more care, more attention than I could when I was younger. So, for me, it always works out. And I realize aging can be a very beautiful process for those who can afford it. For those who cannot, and I have been to old age homes where, in fact, I think quite recently, one of my Instagram reels was showing a couple who gone to Taj Mahal. They tied their elderly grandmother up in the car and left her locked there and went to see Taj Mahal. And we've heard cases of, elderly women being abandoned in Varanasi under the pretense of taking them there on a religious holiday or experience. And then I've been to lesser privileged old age homes. In fact, I could be wrong, but there was one run by Helpage in Chhatarpur where I had gone right when COVID started. And there is a difference in, what goes on with aging for those who might not be able to have pros and cons of net worth at the end of their life. And what also really worries me somewhere is that this is my generation. I'm the millennial generation. For me, not leaving your parents was sort of just drilled into you. It's not a choice. And the same with, my mother's generation, which I guess is Gen X, or I think Gen X. Anyways, but I don't know what 20-year-olds might be thinking. I don't have children myself, and I sometimes wonder, my nieces and nephews around me, what will keep them connected to me? Can I depend upon them? Do I need to then save up this much of finances so that I can also buy love and care and attention and health? So this is something that, I was keen to understand. And then I was sent this report by Helpage where they're looking at something which I don't think has ever been studied before, which is the intergenerational perspectives on aging. And I'm very curious to know more about the report, but I also want to know the impact that could have on people who are elderly or who are aging. So we have with us today Mr. Rohit Prasad, who is the CEO of Helpage India, and he's very kindly come on very short notice to do this podcast with me. So I'm super excited. Thank you, sir. How are you?
Very well, Sonali. Thank you so much for having me on the podcast. Thank you.
Tell me, how did this report even happen? It's something that, I've really not seen anyone study. We've studied aging, fertility, population, but we've not studied the attitude towards aging.
Sonali, I think you in your introduction, you touched upon many points and you took us on a bit of a philosophical view of life in a way, because aging, as we say, aging is living. It's a very natural part of who we are. If we are privileged, we will age, and that is something that all of us must recognize. Death is a given, but now you can almost say that aging, and one can hope to live up to 80 now, and that's also a given. And but the fears around aging are very natural, and it is there, very prevalent, highly prevalent, and that's a narrative that needs to change, but it is there. The aspect about dignity and independence, we sometimes say, seniors, when you reach that age, what is that you want? Most importantly, what do you want? And two things come out: dignity and independence. And that's why I say those are the IDs of a senior citizen. They want those two. So how do you ensure that? And that's the big question, not only for elders within our families, but also elders around us. Many of them are not advantaged, and Helpage works with the disadvantaged elders. Poverty, isolation, neglect is what characterizes their life, day-to-day life, and therefore this is an important aspect that we are talking about. Now, if you step back for a moment and you say, what is aging? Now, as Helpage, we don't look it like a biological process or an individual journey. We like to see it like a social experience, because it is that we age in families, around families, with loved ones, within the community. And if that is so, then how can society find a way of aging better? Now, our central thinking is that family is the unit, and family should be the main pillar around the aging process, around which we do our journeys. Now, we all know that, the Indian society, the traditions of and the culture of respecting age is very, very strong. And it's wonderful. That's what characterizes us. That's what we are proud of. But we also know that winds of change are there. A lot of things are changing around us. Urbanization, migration, people are moving out, digital technology is coming in a big way. And the level of change, dramatic change that has happened over the last 10, 15 years is absolutely phenomenal. And in that process, you have the Gen Zs, who are the 15 to 20. You belong to millennial, I belong to Gen X, I am 54 years old. But the Gen Zs, the 15 to 30 years, are a big force now. And that they have a break-free generation, they have their thought process, they want to change norms. But at the same time, further down the road, I don't see the other side, because there is no other side. The same person or the person down the road, you have senior citizens. And the senior citizens have lived their life in a different context. So when we look at India, or any country for that matter, we have many generations of or cohorts that are living together now. And that raises the question of generation gap. And that is the central theme that has been worrying us. We have looked at it in many aspects, and we said, this generation gap, what is it? And it manifests itself in many ways. Somebody would say in family, mom or grandmother, I want to do this. You will never understand what I'm saying. And it's something that you hear quite often. But you'd also say elders who will say, look, we understand what the life you have a tough life, but do find time for me. And that's the space in which we started thinking about this intergenerational bonds report. It's never been done before. We know this is happening. The generation gap is there. But what are the aspects? So perceptions, how do we view aging? Interactions, how do two generations talk to each other? Inclusion, how do digital and other ways, health, how does it intersect with the generations? Digital is a big thing now, and that, of course, creates a context. So we said, let's explore this. And that's why we launched the report. But simultaneously, we also launched a campaign called Walk in My Shoes. Because we said it is not about one generation telling the other generation. It's about two generations trying to understand each other, why the ties are weakening, why some of the gaps are there, and what can be done about. So that's the broad way in which we looked at it, and we said this is a pivotal, powerful force. We must understand more around it.
You know, when you did the report, can you just maybe walk me through a little bit of the age groups and the background and the scope of the survey that you've done?
Okay, so we focused on the urban space. So we took 10 cities as our survey cities, a mix of the metros and the tier two. And the idea was that this report will bring out the perspectives of the youth. So 70% of the sample size we kept on youth. So about in a total of 5,700, 70% on youth. But we also wanted the perspective of the elders. And we had 30% of elders responding to. We intentionally kept it very face to face. So these are all conversations, people recording, and not only data, but also stories. So we have, a number of comments, emotional outbursts and other thoughts that came out during the conversations, because these questions are not a simple tick mark questions. It makes you explore and go into your heart and then respond. So that was the scope of the report that we did.
Yeah. Oh God, I need to know, how did you get young people to open up? How did you get them to sit still and talk?
Tough one.
That's quite a remarkable feat.
Tough one. And remember, these were 18 to 30-year-olds. So
how did they find time to do this?
So for that,
I can hardly get my friends to talk to me.
Yes, it's a tough one, but
Yeah.
I think the agency that you partnered with, probably they had the Gen Zs going or doing it, so that probably helped.
There was a connect there. So tell me, out of the findings, I must have been many, but what are the findings that have really stood out for you, and you've been working with, in this space for so long? What surprised you? What touched you? What stays with you?
Yeah. So when we started doing this, we did not know what to expect. And we said, we don't know the state of the mind or the state of the intergenerational relations between a Gen Z group and a seniors group. But we were quite pleasantly surprised that much of our own intuitive thinking that the bonds are really broken down, the gap is really wide, we found that, yes, the gap is there. And there is a recognition from both sides that the gap is there. But there was something very positive that both sides, a significant number, said that the gap is manageable. So that was the first thing that gave us a positive sign and said that, well, the roots are strong. Second, we found that the elders and the youth, spoke their heart, and it was quite interesting that they were sharing a lot of their emotions and views quite candidly.
Mm-hmm.
But the most striking aspect, I would say, is that the youth came forward, and remember, 70% audience was the youth. Youth came forward with saying that they respect the elders, they value the elders, they value their contributions, they think positively about them. And that was something that was not counterintuitive, but we were thinking that there may be far more tension than connection. And that was a remarkable thing. But there were 4 or 5 aspects which was almost in the sense of duality, because there were connections but also a lot of contradictions, and that probably suggests the very complex dynamics in which we are living. I mentioned about different cohorts. So the youth had a lot of respect and value for the elders, but at the same time were holding very stereotyped views. For example, many of them characterize elders as lonely and dependent, because that's what they see. And that's a characterization which is worrying, because that's the perception that they will keep. They said that they live in the same household. Well, many of them, they live in the same household, same home, same dining table. Proximity is there, but connection is not there. Conversations are not happening. And we related it to many other comments that we heard, that we eat food on the same dining table, but hardly talk. We live in the same household, but there is very little connection. They also said that, there's empathy. They want to help. But then we found a gap between intent and practice. And the main reason was what you said: how do you keep them, hold their attention? And I related to time. So the time aspect came out. So, and we say that, time is the new respect, a new currency for respect. You may touch their feet, you may, love them, you may respect them. But what's most important is whether you are spending time with them. And that elders felt that, yes, they respect me, but I feel lonely, I feel isolated, I feel unvalued. Not because it's not there in the heart, but it's not translating into something that is, realizable for me. And these were moments that, captured the essence of what I say, connection but contradictions. And the final point, there are many others, but one aspect I just want to share with you is the aspect of loneliness. And we talk about, you have a health and wealth, podcast. Physical health, mental health is something that you have covered a lot. But social health is one of the most under recognized areas. It's a silent killer that is amongst the society. Gen Z is affected by it. So are the elders. WHO came out with a report, and you'll be surprised at the statistics. So people don't realize the consequence of it. It has, of course, a lot of benefits. But if you flip it around, 30% risk increases for cardiac disease and stroke if you are lonely or isolated. 20% increase in cognitive decline, in dementia and others. So this silent aspect, which is coming out in this particular report, is something that was a kind of a thread that was running across. And the digital divide, it always gets talked about. We are focused a lot on digital, addressing the digital divide. But look at it from, and the report brought out very, in a way very starkly, in the same household, you have the most digitally native people. They grew up, they have the, they know it inside out. And in the same household, people who are struggling. And there's a tremendous knowledge transfer possible from within the household or within the community, but it's not happening. Elders want to be digitally savvy, but it's not happening. Youth find it tough because they say they don't understand, they may be not interested. It takes a lot of struggle to explain to them. And the elders say, I want to learn. You don't have the patience. You don't have the inclination. And so those are the dynamics that came out very strongly in the report. The realities, but at the same time, the tensions and the challenges. But in overall perspective, it suggested that both are willing to walk and bridge the gap. And that was a very positive sentiment that we took away.
Now, I don't think anyone ever resents or feels as if they can't respect an elderly person in the family. But actually, it's not social health that I find interesting. What I find interesting is the social structures itself and the way they've completely changed, right? So, at one point, you had 8 kids. You had Masi, Chacha, Chachi, Bua, everybody around. The burden, and I'm going to use it quite frankly because it does become a burden, and there's so much happening. There's a, one chest pain. It could be anything. It could be like you have to go to a pulmonologist, a cardiologist, you have diabetes, you have all these things, and then you have traffic, you have waterlogging, you have your work. So it is a burden, let's be frank, to
Yes.
do all of this completely on your own. Now that the structures have become so completely isolated, one person cannot do it. So I'm a single child,
Right.
quite a rarity actually in my generation,
Right.
but it is difficult. I have a elderly mother, even though she stays quite close by. Um, for a while I struggled, and then, something very beautiful has happened where it somewhere started to penetrate, and she's Gen X, the fact that family doesn't have to be the ones who are there. You can have friends. My mom she has a busier social calendar than I do.
Yes.
Morning to evening, she's out with new friends,
Yes.
walking buddies. And so, I think when you're aging, and I'm quite happy about my generation also finding peace and acceptance of the fact that friends can be family. In fact, we have to tap into all these other resources that are available.
Right.
So very often I do tell them, these days when birthdays happen, for example, and now very slowly it's getting very boring to give people cake. And also, you feel really bad because you never know when you'll give them diabetes. So, the idea of birthday is also changing. So very often my friends and I, we do decide to go and just spend time with our friend's mother or our friend's father,
Just
or,
beautiful.
just go to an old age home because, sometimes connecting or spending time with someone who's elderly, who's not your mom and dad, it's very different.
Yes.
Because mom and dad would, expect a lot.
Yeah. Absolutely.
There's always a to-do list.
Yes, it is.
And
Yes.
I don't blame them.
Yeah.
Because they grew up doing that for their parents.
Yes.
They grew up with that setting.
Yeah.
So it's okay to expect that.
Right.
Number two, mom and dad have forgotten what it was like when they were working.
Yes.
I mean, it's
different.
bound to happen.
Yeah.
Somehow they made time.
No, it's
But,
different. You're absolutely right.
It is different. They've forgotten.
Yes.
In fact, I have never had so many conversations with the elderly people in my home
Right.
when I was growing up and living away from this country as I have to now.
Right.
And I understand that need to connect, but I also feel it's so important to make that shift, right?
Yeah.
That look beyond
Family.
your immediate family.
Yeah.
And that's why I feel, old age homes play such a, vital role in all of this.
Yeah. Similarly, I think, again, you mentioned on something which is almost like a problem statement before the society, but answer is not very clear. It remains unsolved for. And very beautifully, you mentioned about the community-based approach. In our work, we talk about it a lot. But let me take a couple of minutes to just give you the background of this, and you're absolutely right. The context in which the society is right now is completely different from, and it's very, very sharply changing. And let me give you the statistics. We talked about the joint family system. Everybody was staying together. The latest NFHS survey, the National Family Health Survey, says 50% of the households are now nuclear. Imagine, how rapidly we have shifted from a joint family system to a 20% of the seniors live alone or with their spouse. So the concept of family with children is not there for 20% of the elders. Some of them don't have children, by the way. They may not be there, and therefore the whole concept of family is different. The space, the living space itself is changing. Earlier they used to be all together. Now people prefer proximity living, or they are away in some other cities. And therefore, even if the family is there, practically it's not there because they are not there. In this context, how do elders and the younger people connect? Now, technology is playing a big role, and it's a big enabler. We are all very positive about that. But the idea that beyond family, do we have to think beyond family? That is a very, very important area that people are now talking about in a big way. And we say that community-based approaches, that you think beyond the families, it's the neighborhood, it's the urban systems, it's the design of the cities. All of that must allow people to live in their homes, but live with dignity, independence, and participation. Because you want to live a good life. You don't want to live a secluded, isolated life. But the family may not be there. So who are the other people who can play a role? And that's where we find that the intergenerational, when you say intergenerational, essentially we are saying that people who are above of a certain age category, so not your generation, but they may not be your children. They could be others. And we have some beautiful examples. We do programs with schools, and this is one of the longest running programs that we do. It's called the Students Action for Valuing Elderly or Value Education. And we bring the school children and the seniors together. Now, they are not grandparents and grandchildren from that perspective, but they are still in that relationship. And when they meet, magic happens. And remember, it's not their grandchildren, but two generations are meeting. We have a program called Digital Gurukul. Gurukul, not KUL, but COOL. And we are saying that the younger people can be the Gurukuls for the seniors and interact with them, teach them. So in all our old age homes, we have this concept of bringing the younger generation to the connect with the seniors. But beyond that, children, youth, working with elders, connecting them with them more, having them as friends. These are ideas which are not there in our society right now as a mainstream idea. It's not happening because right now we are focused more on the gap. But like you suggested, if we start focusing on bridging those gaps, start creating those forums, community-based programs, start having the society think much more broadly, I think the value that we can, bring to these kind of challenges will not only help the family, because you rightly said the family is under stress and strain, they need support, but these approaches are going to make a lot of difference.
I agree. And in fact, another thing which is, been increasingly sort of coming to my attention is the kind of acceptance that, the younger generations are willing to give for certain things. So, for example, I have this beautiful book on marriages right after independence, and amongst the educated classes who really looked up and valued Victorian manners.
Right.
So one of the things, of course, was, you never spoke back to your mother-in-law. If you entered a household which was meat eating, even if you were vegetarian,
Right.
you had no choice. You had to sit at that table and eat something which you frankly might have found completely disgusting, which you had to have that level of respect and acceptance. Cut down to my generation. If I go, and I did, I actually was asked to become vegetarian, and I said, no, I'm not going to do this. There is that, how much we're willing to accept for someone else, and Gen X, having grown up, also having that same thing. They didn't have a choice, you know. I've heard some horrible accounts of very patriarchal, family life where you won't have a choice.
Yeah.
And you having gone through that and accepted it, you can't understand how someone else is rejecting it, because suddenly it shakes you up. And, and I think that sort of conflict, where, especially between women now, where a younger woman is coming in and saying, what you did was rubbish, you've done it, you've ruined your life, I'm not going to do the same, and you don't listen to me, I'm taking a son and going away.
Yeah.
I'm shaking up everything. I'm not judging either party. But it is something. In fact, my friend just had a son and everyone was celebrating, and she said, so what? What's going to happen? There's no guarantee he's going to stay with me.
Yes.
I mean, forget about marriage. Even if the daughter-in-law is amazing or the son-in-law is amazing, there's so many other things, education, careers, there's no guarantee anymore. So there is a lot of mental shakeups, which I think Gen X is going through, which my generation probably wouldn't have to, because, we've sort of seen and we have dealt to some extent with this mental health, and but my mom's generation is like completely bewildered. Like, what's happening?
What's happening? Yeah.
You know, what are what are these answers? What is this need for love? We don't
Correct.
talk about love. We don't say I love
Correct.
you.
Correct.
You know, and it is very shocking.
Yeah.
And I feel a lot of stress comes from there as well, right?
Right. No, and you're so right. And I'm just reflecting on, as I said, I am a Gen X, and and I have children who are Gen Z, and I look around and we see all these different cohorts, elders who are walked the path ahead of me. And you're right. I think the norms or the are getting challenged so dramatically that every generation has to think about how to you know live in this space. But also, I think there is this very important aspect which came out in the report also. We talked about time as the new currency of respect, but the idea that how do we build empathy and understanding of different positions? We may have different views, but at the same time, you are wanting, and we do desire, and that's our goal, that generations must work together. It doesn't necessarily mean that I agree to everything what the other generation believes in. It also doesn't believe that they believe.
No.
But are we having enough conversations? Are we having enough understanding that is being explored? And that is where we find the gap. You see, the idea that different viewpoints are there, norms are getting challenged is absolutely, there. But it cannot be an inevitable thing. It cannot be a destined thing that this gap is there and therefore it will be there forever and it will keep growing. As a society, we have to take the view, and we found the roots of this. Fundamentals are strong but getting stretched. Ties are strong but tearing away. And we see this happening. And you mentioned some of the points there. But what do we do to bridge that gap? And that's where the empathy and understanding, and the report shows some of that. The elders are willing to adjust and see things differently. And some of them are beginning to realize that this is the way you should do it, or this is not accepted. They are finding ways to see how it can be reconciled or realigned in their view. But the youth, remember, they are the challengers of the game, in a way, So if you're challenging, and that's what we tell to the youth, that, bring the empathy and understanding to the elders' context as well. Because if you understand you love them, you respect them, but if you understand them, then you may change some things amongst yourself, may build a better living cohort or an ecosystem. And therefore, this is a path that needs to be done together. Because you are youth now, you will be joining the next generation very soon. So I am a 2B elder, and you are a 2B Gen X. So we are all living in these transition points. So what are the fundamental principles that will allow us to live together, connect together, have conversations, collaborate on areas that we can do? And there's tremendous potential. And that's what this INBO report or Intergenerational Bonds report we are stressing on. There is a huge potential to nurture and build back the bonds that may be seen to be withering away. You have that potential. And that's
I believe in it.
central belief that we must hold on to and work on it.
Yeah. In fact, it was a very, very remarkable incident that happened just yesterday. I gone to a friend's house, and she has a 3-year-old boy, and he's my nephew in that sense. And he woke up from his nap and came. And I remember as a child, when you enter a room with outsiders, you won't have a choice but to talk.
Yes.
You have to sit. If they want to cuddle you, do kuchiku,
Correct.
you have to accept it. Here, the dynamics are so different,
Yes.
The boy didn't want to talk. There was no pressure. He didn't want to even look at me. And there's a lot of consent, where even to touch, if he says, no, I don't want a kiss or don't want a hug, you as an outsider are not supposed to, or even actually, frankly, you're told, do not impose something onto my child that my child is not comfortable with. So, somewhere I think this conversation is important between, not just between family members, but also between outsiders who are coming in.
Right.
There's somewhere the art of listening and also the art of saying truly,
Correct.
what your boundaries are.
Correct.
It is growing.
Correct.
It really is growing.
Yeah.
I see it in, even though Gen Z doesn't get much time, but they do know how to listen, and they do also know how to very frankly say what's on their mind.
Absolutely.
Which makes it much easier. Na? You say that you don't want love, I'm fine alone, I don't need you, but you do need me.
Correct.
So it's better you say you need me only. Na?
Correct.
So it is, you're right, there is a lot of hope.
And sorry, you
forward.
gave that example, and I very recently, I was at this conference, and our own conference, and somebody had got their kid along. He's a 10, 15-year-old guy. So I asked him, did you like it? And he was absolutely blunt. He said, no, I didn't like it. I think it was a waste of my time. And I'm looking at him, and he's, the father is aghast. That, but they say their mind. And they say it very, very openly, not trying to buffer things. And we see this characteristic in the Gen Z particularly, because they're challenging the norms, and they are willing to be very, they're willing to shape their lives as they want. And it's perfectly, something that others have to recognize. But we do put a little bit of, or a fair bit of ask, and that's why I always say that, the sense of taking things for granted should also be something that they should realize. Now, I'll give you examples. A mom makes dinner, the child goes out, comes back, did not inform, and then goes to sleep. The mom is waiting. And the next day, mom doesn't say anything and say, okay. The child says, oh, this is fine. Why do I need to? But the idea that somebody made an effort, and that effort must be acknowledged. And that's why you say the sense of gratitude. Parents love their children unconditionally. Grandparents love their grandchildren unconditionally. So that unconditional love is there. But at the same time, the younger generation also have to look at things in perspective of acknowledging, in expressing their love more often. And sometimes I regret I didn't hug my father as many times I should have. Both my mom and dad have passed away, but the sense of not acknowledging or taking things for granted, also in the rush of life and in the lack of time, and therefore tending to do things which may be hurting the parents or the grandparents, or not fully appreciating their efforts. That is also something that we must not take it that it is acceptable. And we must try to bring that, because that's what when I grew up, as you rightly said, it was a given that I will take care of my parents. I may not hold the same view, and the report actually has a statement that the younger generation are more open to different living formats in future. They're not only relying upon family, but also seeing whether other caregivers can give them care.
Yeah.
Why? Because we realize that it's so difficult. We don't want to do, that to our children. And those are the realities. But that's why I think the intergenerational bond report tends to put some obligation and onus on all sections of the cohort. And that's where we say that, yes, the ties are strong, tearing away, but the hope is very much there. Because we see the youth, the Gen Z, very candidly accepting certain things, but at the same time having those deep roots of respect, care, love, respect, and and regard for the wisdom. And if you start from that position, then the journey to build stronger ties and bonds with not only your parents or grandparents, neighbors, but all community members, and they're willing to volunteer, they're willing to come forward. Some systems need to change, and that is a remarkable thing about this intergenerational bonds report, because it's in bow with a very positive sense, not disregarding the challenges and the tension or the gaps that are there. You're not disregarding that, but there is something to build on.
I was curious at one point, wondering what would such a report even achieve? What's the point? And then we had this beautiful conversation, and I said, yeah, I actually don't even need to ask you that, because this is it, right? We're conversing on a topic that, and half the job is just to build awareness that, this exists, but there is some hope, and let's build upon that. And, I think I'm really glad you guys have done this report, and thank you so much for coming and talking to me about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Sally. I'm glad that you mentioned the last point, because this report is not just a field report. There is, it's a silent drift. This drift of generation gap is silent one. We wanted to put a spotlight on it. Second, it brings data. The real data to suggest that
which we don't never have,
which we never have.
Okay.
And the third is that it uncovers the very not talked about, the emotional and the challenges that both the generations may be facing, and therefore we feel that this can feed into reports, feed into policies, systems. Media can take note of it in terms of its narrative that they talk about aging, and you picked up this, and I'm glad you picked this up, Sonali, because not everybody does it. So aging is not the top of the agenda, but hopefully it will be. And but also workplaces, corporates, workplaces, homes, the age tech sector, the technology people, are they thinking about age inclusive technology? So multiple dimensions, multiple stakeholders, because we live our lives in all these domains. So unless all these domains start thinking about how to bring this, less ageist, more age inclusive, more bonds that we want to build around us, then we have that's the future we want. And thank you so much, Sonali, for spotlighting this particular complex, but very important.
It's worth being spotlit, because very often in India we get such dry data. It's all about diseases and the rate of diseases and the aging and this and that and problems, but perspective, what are people thinking? We don't have enough of that, those kind of reports. So yes, thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It was my pleasure to be here. Thank you.
If you've enjoyed this episode, and if you'd like to know a little bit more about any health issues, you can write to us. We're available at pods@indiatoday.com, or you can message us on 8588966996. And if you have some stories to share, and you want to boost my positivity levels, and please leave a comment or a review. We're there on all audio streaming channels.